Good afternoon and welcome everybody to the 123 Sky Fantasy Football Podcast, brought to you by Fantasy Football Hub, the home of fantasy football. Those watching on YouTube, please forgive us the slight indulgence on screen at the moment. It's not every day we can do this, but the graphic is courtesy of @Brownie_SkyFS. Please drop him a follow. But it's more to do with Paul and I having an actual fight, I think, wasn't it, a while ago of who would win. So he drew us in the boxing ring. I think the body on it is pretty, right in terms of what it would be, for me in real life, Paul. I'm not sure on you, but I'll take it. I'm really happy. But yeah, it's very, very apt, I think, looking at the leaderboard as it stands. Paul, probably for the first time in your life, the question you want to hear more than ever is, how was your Sky weekend?
I went up a place.
I went up a place. Brilliant.
Yeah, no, I had an excellent Sky weekend.
An excellent weekend.
Excellent weekend. Moved up to first overall on the leaderboard, and I made a few moves at the weekend. 2 planned, 1 unplanned, and all 3 came off handsomely. And it's not often that I don't like putting the captaincy on someone else I'm bringing in unless it's a standout, obvious captain. For me, it was on one of the cases and not on the other, but I had that in my head as my plan all week, all along anyway. And if I had changed my mind, then I'd be more frustrated if I didn't do it. So, yeah, really good weekend.
It was one of those weekends where once the deadline went, just a sigh of relief, because all week, like, we were messaging during the week about Haaland and what to do, and I was convinced, I think even on Thursday, that I'm not doing the Haaland move. Go for Tony, see her out, get the extra information, and it wouldn't have worked out that badly, right? You would have had the extra transfer, you still scored a few points. I'm not sure who I would have captained. I would have probably captained Rashford, which would have gone all right, I suppose, but obviously bringing in Haaland and captaining him. So when he scored that overhead kick, that was one of those moments of absolute ecstasy. He was brought off after that as expected, and they got the penalty, and you've always get the thing of what could have been, but that overhead kick, how spectacular it was, could have matched my enjoyment for the day and the moment on bringing him in and captaining him, right?
Yeah. I'm a big believer in chaos theory and butterfly effect anyway, so they might never have got the penalty if Haaland was still on the pitch. Exactly. Could have got sent off, could have got a second booking.
Bloody hell, mate. That's glass half empty, that is.
No, I'm very happy with the output, the outcome of those decisions, and it worked really well. One thing I will say is I appreciate all the kind words and on Twitter and even in the questions sections in here, but what I'm looking forward to doing on this pod is getting back to business, and let's talk about upcoming plans and not resting on laurels and thinking or anything like that, because I certainly don't have that mindset. I want to get back to business and start thrashing out ideas and thoughts.
Just on the Sunday then first, obviously Salah in as captain, that missed penalty hurt a bit. I was planning on doing, I think it was Enzo to Martinelli after Chelsea's final fixture of their run next week before the FA Cup. Yep. I did Rashford, so I kind of believed the hype a little bit around his injury, so I did a kind of last minute Rashford to Martinelli, which obviously worked out incredibly well as well. I think that Martinelli has just looked superb. He was definitely coming in at some point for this, small run of fixtures, and yeah, we interestingly had a question off Windy 1965 right at the start of the pod. He said, "Afternoon all, no Haaland and Saka captain over Martinelli cost me 39 points. I would have been 8th overall. Am I an idiot, or is it the curse of the 50-50 decision?" And for me, this is just absolutely pure 50-50. It's just the way it lands, right? You've got to be in a position to give yourself those 50-50s. And I look back to the Salah one. What was it? A 42-pointer he scored? 42-point captain a few weeks ago. Yep. We didn't have that, right? And we kind of lost out on that 50-50 massively with Captain Rashford. It just goes to show for me time and again that this whole season is not about one decision. It's about how you play the game as a whole, right? And getting yourself in positions all the time to kind of get lucky. Just interested on your thoughts on that, I suppose.
Yeah, if I didn't own Salah, I would have captained Saka, and even if I owned Martinelli, I would have captained Saka over Martinelli yesterday. So that's not like, for me. I feel maybe it feels a little bit more a hindsight move than not getting in Haaland. So I'm not. I don't. There's not only one bit of criteria that I think about when I'm making a move, and I knew that I would have talked about emotional psychology and the way that I play the game a lot as well. And next week, even if I thought Haaland was going to be benched at the weekend, or I thought there was the weekend passed, or there was an element in it, I knew that then I'd be fretting over this decision about bringing in Haaland against Leicester, who is like one of the worst teams in the league defensively just now. I knew I'd have this deliberation all of this week as well. So for me, just making that move, getting it out over and done with last weekend, then preps me for the following weekend, so I can rest a bit easy. So that was the decision and made there. That's my own decision and how I like to think about things. I know that people don't have. Maybe I'm overly emotional when I think of things a bit too much, but certainly on the Martinelli Saka thing, I would have made that, and for me, that's I don't think that many people would have captained Martinelli yesterday personally, even though he was playing on Trent's side, and you could make that argument just now how Liverpool defended.
Saka scored the 18-point or 19-pointer the week before against Palace as well, so he was the obvious captain pick there, and he wasn't lucky because he was involved in the first goal. He put in some really good corners and things. It just so happens that it's just one player's day on any one given sort of match, and it just happens to go Martinelli's way. But it seems to be everything. Well, you especially, but I suppose because our teams are reasonably similar. Touch the moment goes our way, and you just need it, right? You just need that. You need that luck, and it is. If for all you can just say as much about skill or anything else as you want, but when you pick the players, they have to perform, and that's the end of it. So
sometimes you're kind of shoehorned into decision making as well. So if I had the money to have moved Rashford to Salah yesterday, I'd have done that and not brought in Martinelli. And it feels to me like, Martinelli picked up 11-pointer, so over Salah's 8. So that was probably the bigger difference yesterday than captain and Salah in that position.
And if I could have afforded Gabriel, I would have probably been tempted to go for Gabriel ahead of Martinelli, and that is one of the decisions which ruled him out immediately for me, was that I couldn't afford him. But Gabriel, looking at the ownerships, looking at X, Y, and Z, he's got passing the last few games, would probably have been as good an option Martinelli. So yeah, you're right. It's funny how it works out sometimes, isn't it?
It's interesting in the Arsenal position because we'd highlighted that game day a couple of weeks ago of this is the mass exodus of Arsenal players, and it feels like we've kept some and we're re-adding.
But we also said at the time to keep some to be able to pivot back quickly and then pivot back off, and that's so I went from 2 to 3. I think you went from 3 to 4 and things, but yeah, like it was a mass exodus in terms of we took 3 or 4 out of our team, but we still retained the 2 sort of key players from a budgetary view and captaincy view, pivoted back on. So Arsenal, as of yesterday, had a 5-2 over a few teams, I think over Man City and whatever else. So it was the right time to pivot back on again. Once this run ends, it'll be the right time to pivot back off again, because other teams will have like a 7-4 over them and stuff. So it's just that forward view all the time, and having your team in a constant state of being able to just move quickly one way or the other. And yeah, as I say, it's going our way at the moment, right? But who knows what the rest of the season holds. What are we talking about today, buddy?
We'll just look at some key player hop-off points. So in particular, Rhea, Tony and Watkins. Talk a bit about Leicester, whether that seems like the only tricky fixture to navigate through based on what we know, and we're only missing 1 week's worth of TV fixtures now. I know there's one game to get rescheduled in there. Oh, that would be the week earlier, and then there's a handful of games to get rescheduled that week as well. But it seems like the landscape's easiest to navigate, apart from the Leicester game, so we'll talk a little bit about and then we'll just look at a couple of key dates for, again, hop-on points, perhaps from new teams that run with extra fixtures to the end of the season.
Cool. Okay, so in terms of, Tony, I've added in Raya and Watkins as well, because, we brought these players in, or, a lot of managers brought them in for a set period of time because they had a lot of fixtures in a congested period, but they all sort of end soon, don't they? So what's your thinking on these 3 players?
Yeah, so on Villa in particular, so looking at Villa first, after Tuesday the 25th of April, Villa's fixtures stiffen slightly. Now, that's maybe not a major concern for Watkins anyway, because he's been kind of fixture-proof running just now and averaging 8-9 points a game rather than the 7 points from picking up a shots bonus consistently. However, Villa only got 5 games after that point, and Man United and Man City both have 8 and have like a perfect hop-on point there as well.
Tuesday to the Wednesday.
Yeah, so and I'm not necessarily looking at a forward to replace Watkins with there, but Rodri, that could be the ideal point to hop back onto Rashford if people have taken him out or continue to take him out. Man City defenders also, they see the back four seems relatively settled now, and they've kept, I think it's 5 clean sheets in the last 7 games now. So for those that were tortured by City defence and Ederson historically, maybe there's like a renewed hope now in picking up kind of Ake, Akanji, those 8 million-ish players, 8 million-ish defenders from City. So that's a good hop on point for Villa, from Villa, if anyone's looking for it. And then the following week, on Saturday the 29th, after Arsenal play that fixture against Chelsea that week, Man United, City and Brighton all have a mass of games from that point onwards. So that, again, that looks like an ideal time to hop off those players now. Brighton's an interesting one because just now they've got 10 games to play. Most other teams have got 8, some have got 9. And then they're going to blank in 2 weeks. And they're going to blank in 2 weeks' time. So they retain the extra game on top of that as well. So I wouldn't be looking to move on any Brighton players right now, especially for that Chelsea game. It feels like, what's the old wrestling term? Irresistible force meets the unmovable object. Feels kind of like a little bit for that game anyway. There's probably a lot of unknowns in points, expected points from there. But there's multiple jump-on points, and even a natural jump-on point. So if Brighton played the same day as a player that you're playing out, but then Brighton play the midweek, that doesn't often feel like you're gaining there. But when you look at the volume of fixtures from Brighton till the end of the season from each point onwards, which is I've tried to map out in a matrix, then every time Brighton play, if the player that you're taking out isn't playing on that day, it feels like you're getting the gains there automatically.
Yeah, agree. And have you started to kind of have a look at, obviously, both in terms of our transfer account and, if you look on Ian Parrin's fixture planner and on FF stuff as well, you can actually see the end of the season now in one view, which we haven't had before. Literally, the end of the season is in view, and and the transfer accounts will start to reflect this now. Have you started to think around every transfer being, firstly, obviously meaningful? All transfers are meaningful. I just mean meaningful towards the end state of your team, because you touched on it earlier. There's only one game left, really, Leicester and Everton on Monday the 1st of May, which is quite a tricky one to kind of navigate. For every other day, obviously assuming players stay fit and stuff, you've got Man City, Liverpool, Arsenal, Spurs, Brighton, Villa even. You can cover the captaincies reasonably easily. So have you started to look at that end state of your team and kind of what it might look like?
Yeah, so I've got a couple of points on this. I've got a loose transfer plan which isn't bound by finance or like budget or anything like that, which gives me a contingency 3 transfers that I've got unplanned. Now, plans will change and players will get injured and daisy chains will appear, etc. in that period of time as well. What I do find interesting is that blank and then the doubles afterwards, because it's one or the other. Like, you're not getting players playing in that blank game week and then also playing in double afterwards. So it's going to be very tricky if I want to get rid of all the players from the big teams that blank in there and then just to get them back. If I had a fair few more transfers, I think that I would look for these 3 for zeros, 4 for zeros. Yeah. You can't end up negative down from a transfer by moving on to a 4 for 0 for a Crystal Palace player. But those feel more luxury to me at this moment in time, and I would rather hold the extra 2 or 3 unplanned transfers till a little bit further down the line. Maybe it is more apparent on, even with 2 games to go, that a Man City defender plays in the midweek leading up to the last game, because they start on a floor of 5 points. And if you see the team sheet, then having a player like that over a player that's perhaps served you well but doesn't have good fixtures for the last 2 or 3 games, or perhaps only has one poor fixture towards the end anyway, then that gives me that opportunity. So if I had well above the average transfer, so I was thinking like kind of mid-teens, if I had that just now, I'd be looking for those 2 or 3 for zeros from Man City, maybe even taking Haaland out and then bringing back Haaland against Arsenal in that game. It's probably not something that I'm going to do based on, as I say, me earmarking kind of 6 moves there. So to answer your question, yes, I've started to think about what my long-term plan is, and it's really utilising those fixture volumes, predominantly the teams that I mentioned there when I was looking at hop-off points. So Man United, City and Brighton's the 3 teams that I'm looking to maximise. Man United's difficult because there's not many assets that I like, particularly from a Sky perspective. However, fixture volumes, get 2 points every time you make an appearance. So I will likely dip into those 3 teams.
Yeah, just have a look at the kind of players who probably look to keep almost all through to the end. Even like Salah and Kane, right? Their fixture volume towards the end of the season is pretty much the same as Man City's and United's and Brighton's, who may have kind of one extra game. I'm thinking, if you think of Liverpool from Fulham on Wednesday the 3rd of March, play 5 times, in the 3 weeks there. Spurs as well, their final 4 games. If you look at them, home to Palace on the 6th of May, away to Villa, home to Brentford, away to Leeds, you're not be wanting to take out Kane there for. I don't see any benefit of, or any massive upside of taking him out for, say, I don't know, Ake or a Kanji, just for example, or a Bruno Fernandes. So I think there will be players like Salah, probably Kane, maybe a budget player or 2. If people bring back in, Salah, but if people hold on to Enzo Fernandez, those kind of players who are just making it possible for you to afford the kind of team you want. And as you say, then that end state team, Brighton, in terms of budget, form, everything for Brighton is absolutely superb. City as well, fixture volume, playing for the league. They're not going to be resting everyone, right? They have to literally win every single game. They're not going to be resting everyone. And then United, agree with you on United. I'm not really massively interested in many of their players. I also think this Rashford injury will also have an impact on anyone I pick from United, because if you look at their team without Rashford as an attacking unit, I don't think there's actually that much to choose from. Maybe Bruno, but if we are having Salah, Kane, Haaland, etc., I'm not even sure we can afford Bruno. So it's interesting, like, how we start to think about this now. And you're right. Even in terms of bringing in Martinelli yesterday, I think if there was a better team other than Palace and Leeds, I'm obviously mean that with the greatest respect, maybe better options is the term I would use, but I never seriously looked at AU as a person to bring in. Yes, who obviously banged, or Leeds, like who you bringing in, right? You're just literally sticking your finger in the air, whereas for these premium teams, the players, who you're bringing in. So I think I agree with you. If you've got like more transfers, just for example, now you may be tempted to go, Haaland out to Núñez, or Liverpool attacker, for their away to Leeds, home to Forest, try and smash it a few points there, and then move back to Haaland, or day change to Haaland or to someone else, for example. But I think the big teams and the big players in those teams, alongside the Brighton enablers, which they all are just superb obviously the rest of the season, I can't really see a point of moving off. So,
yeah, I've looked at all the captains, like because we have all the fixtures. There's only that one game week that we don't have the fixtures for. I've looked at all the captaincies. I've covered all the captaincies
exactly.
with 4 of my key players in there, other than the Leicester game, and I've got budget enablers that I want. That I've got fixture volumes till the end of the season. So, yeah, very comfortable in this. And this probably leads me to the next question on Leicester as well, and what I'm planning on doing there. And I think it's going to be something similar to what I did with Salah before. I'll probably bring in a Leicester player and then I'll probably move straight back out again, because on a Monday night it never usually feels like the right time to do that, because it's the end of the game week and you're not getting the fixture games. But because there's a midweek set of half fixtures after Leicester play Everton on the Monday night, I think I'll transition through someone, pick them up as captaincy, whether that's Maddison or whether that's a starting Iniacho, or I mean, there's not too many options that I will consider. Maddison, Barnes, Iniacho, maybe. I don't even think I would consider Vardy or Daka, even if they were the chosen striker in that game. One of those three, and then straight back out again for another Brighton player. I think they played Man United on that for Thursday. If Rashford hadn't been back the previous week, but comes back that week, move on to Rashford immediately. So I think that's my loose plan there on Leicester. But I'm not ruling out completely skipping it. But Everton at home does seem like a plum fixture, and for a daisy chain move, if I get my 2 double to 4 for the cost of a transfer, yeah, it's not what I value a transfer at, but I think I would still do it to de-risk.
It's interesting because that particular kind of strategy seems to be quite new this season, in terms of normally you would, experienced players in general would look to get those extra fixture gains and whatever else, but it does seem to be this season. I think we did it with Salah in Liverpool midweek game or Monday night game a few weeks ago. I did it with Trippier for Newcastle, or I got one fixture out of it. But that whole hopping on and off these players who you probably don't want long term, but you're just almost covering the game week and then daisy chain off rather than transferring someone in and out, which is not worth it, right? Because it's 2 transfers, and maybe it's because that the way the fixtures have fallen, there's been an obvious daisy chain that you were going to do a move anyway. Maybe that's just what the difference has been this year. What do you think about that? Do you think that's been more of a strategic switch in thinking, or just the way the fixtures have presented themselves?
A little bit of both. I would say it's this season's been strange for fixture volumes amassing. Like Brighton have seemed to have 3 or 4 games in hand on teams all the way through, and therefore the volumes of fixtures changes from week to week on how many games that teams have got left, or how many games that they're amassing within that period of time over another. But not even like a 4-for-1 where you fear that player is somebody that you'd earmarked for a captain and not owning would be detrimental to you. It seems like there's 4-for-0s opening up and similar. So that transitioning through, especially with, like as you say, when not going back to a player. So prime example, Saturday the 29th of April, I feel people are going to hold Arsenal players a bit longer now. Not even necessarily hopping off after the Southampton game, for the reasons that I mentioned before, and that you'd be hopping off to a player that you probably don't want long term because they're playing an extra volume fixtures there, and then you maybe want to go back. And Arsenal probably possibly a good captaincy on Saturday 29th. Anyway, after Arsenal play that game, they've got 4 games thereafter. You could transition through Arsenal to Leicester like on Monday the 1st of May, and then if you come straight off Leicester there, you've got Brighton who've got 7 games left, and I think Man United and Man City have each got 6 games left from that point onwards, so you're already getting 2 extra fixtures. You're moving out a player that you don't want because of fixture volumes, and bringing players in. Brentford exactly the same as well. Yeah. Brentford played Nottingham Forest at home on that Saturday, so that's another prime example where you would come off the where you come off the Brentford player, maybe onto Maddison or Barnes or whoever you wanted for captaincy for that day, and then move on to Man City or Man United or Brighton. I think are the 3 teams there because we know that they will get extra fixtures. Brighton 2 extra fixtures on midweeks. Man United and Man City get an extra 1. Liverpool's still good there as well, but they don't get the extra midweek fixture.
Is it one for Chelsea as well, or am I just making that up? I think it is, isn't it?
There is a later one for Chelsea, but they don't have the extra midweek game midweek.
That's right. That's right. Peter Clinch, who was also the name of my former primary school headmaster, interestingly enough. I hope that's not you, Mr. Clinch. Says that there's some fixtures not on there. That's because obviously they haven't been released yet by the Premier League. But there are extra fixtures to go in for Man City, Man United. I think it's Chelsea and Brighton will have an extra fixture in the second half of this graphic as well, which is why we're kind of saying like that's the time to pile on them. I mean, they look good anyway. Without those extra fixtures, that extra fixture again, it's just going to make him insane. Just before we move on, Paul, into questions things, it's very easy for us to kind of focus on on the template and focus on kind of average transfers and that sort of chat. But for those now who are looking to chase, for those who have got transfers back, they may be 100 points behind their mini league, 50 points in their mini league. There are some opportunities, I think, to kind of claw some ground back, right? What have you got? Any kind of obvious ones?
Differential player, so even with Brighton's extra fixtures, I think nobody will go stealing goals. I don't think that engaged managers will. I think that they'll go more likely back to Ederson, maybe Nick Pope. I think he has an extra game or two in that position as well, or David De Gea. I think that they'll be the most popular ones. So I think Steele doubling up with Dunk. Yes, Dunk is and will continue to be very, very popular, but you could double up or even tripping up with Estupiñán in defence as well. So you get an extra differential there. I think that Leicester-Everton game's interesting. If you hold Maddison now, because they don't blank, I probably would just continue to hold them. Personally, that's more my style of play. But it does offer a differential. Like you can, if you were daisy chaining through, you could pick any starting striker there. I wouldn't pick Daka, but if Daka started, there's a really nice differential for you there as well. The problem that we've got is that I think that most captaincy days are relatively easy. Maybe again another day, Saturday 29th of April, Brighton at home to Wolves, Arsenal at home to Chelsea, Brentford at home to Nottingham Forest, Palace at home to West Ham. That's the 4 fixtures. Maybe there's not a standout captain on that day, so there's a few opportunities. I wouldn't be hitting against someone like Haaland when City's playing or anything like that. Even if I was chasing, I would use the periphery to pick up players and maybe captain on days where it's less obvious.
Yeah, and even in the short term now, after next weekend, so especially after Saturday, there are some teams that have 2 for 0s and 3 for 0s as well. Looking at the Leeds one's interesting. So Leeds have a 3 for 0 over Chelsea, over Man City, over Man United, over Brighton as well. So it's punts, right? But there may be some punts in that team that if they do kick off, that gives you the extra kind of 20 points in 3 fixtures that can really help you move on and and get some ground back. Forest probably not going to, then even Liverpool away to Leeds, home to Forest. You wouldn't be surprised to see Liverpool at home potentially batter Forest 5 or 6-0, right? And someone has to score all the goals. You'd guess that Salah would be involved, but there are other players there that if they really kick on, was it Gakpo? Did he score 2 and have 2? I can't remember. Have 2 assists, and Nunes potentially. Whoever starts in that match, for example, could do really well as defenders as well. I do think there's still a fair few options there. It's just finding these gaps in fixtures, right? And if you're willing to forego Haaland for the Arsenal game, which will be a tough game, there's 4 for 1s and 3 for 1s all over the place as well. So there are plenty there. Glenn asks, Glenn Murray, is there a differential out there that can gain 70 to 90 points? Good question, Glenn. He puts like a laughing emoji at the end. But
Mahrez,
Grealish, there's plenty at the end. And even then, right, if you have got lots of transfers left and want to just think, you can go all in on City is a bit extreme, because they're expensive. But you can go all in on a certain team's attack or defense, and just hope that the others don't. Hope Brighton concede every game. Hope Arsenal don't finish off strongly and stuff and go for it. So they still are, but they're punt at this stage, I think, aren't they? So but good stuff. Let's have a look at the game week ahead of us now on our sites. A nice break. I do enjoy the break time. I love it when there's lots of football, but I also love it then when you have the time to really chill out, especially after a weekend like we've just had.
I was going to say,
it's highly emotional.
That's only true when you've had a good weekend.
It is. When you kind of had a bit of an emotional roller coaster weekend, it's nice to then go chill out. No Friday night game even. And it probably looks reasonably easy to navigate this weekend, I think. So the early kickoff on Saturday: Villa, Newcastle, Wolves, Brentford, Spurs, Bournemouth, Southampton, Palace, Everton, Fulham, Chelsea, Brighton, City, and Leicester. I tell you what's good about the league running this year is that it's going to go down to the wire. You just can't see Haaland being rested, right? You feel he is, unless he gets injured midweek. He's going to start on Saturday, and he'll be the most popular captain, you're guessing, against Leicester.
Yep.
Sunday, then, interesting one. Maybe a bit more interesting. West Ham, Arsenal, Forest, and Man United. So I said I moved on Rashford yesterday. I also moved on Bruno yesterday to Salah. That could be quite a good fixture for Man United, but if Rashford's back, I do have the option of going back off Enzo, because Chelsea have a break in fixtures because of the cap. I can go back onto onto Rashford potentially, but also, is that United game away to Forest the best fixture, or is Arsenal, West Ham? What's your thinking on captaincy on this day, Paul?
Man United, so this is part of the reason for me getting rid of Rashford as well, in that I think I was going to captain Saka on this on next Sunday anyway, based on Arsenal's away form is pretty good, whereas Man United's is dreadful. Now I know that Forest have been poor recently, but Man United's been making hard work of any opposition away from home recently. So yeah. I think I was going to captain Saka anyway, and therefore I don't think that even if Rashford is declared fit, I don't even think I'll get him back for this. Knowing that they blanked the following week. Now, if they hadn't, that'd be a different story completely. But they don't play until the following Thursday after that as well, on which you get to see the team lineups. So I'm pretty comfortable. I think Saka's the best captain. So this is maybe like we're looking for that opportunity to do something different. Maybe if somebody has got Martinelli, maybe it's even as simple as picking a different captain from the same team in that instance. But I think I'll likely captain Saka there, and then not bother with Rashford personally. And that's what I would have done even if I'd held Rashford still.
The thing with no Rashford as well is I do think it massively impacts Man United as a whole team, as in like a whole attacking unit, because he seems to be the only one really who provides any kind of spark that attacking. Right? I know that Casemiro will be back, which will release Bruno a little bit more, but Bruno will be feeding Weghorst and Martial, right? He's not feeding, and he'll be feeding maybe Sancho, Garnacho, Anthony, who are a hit and miss, right? They haven't got the consistency or class of Rashford, so I don't even think it's that scary a fixture. Rashford's not there anyway for the rest of the United players. I mean, Leeds and Liverpool on Monday 17th after yesterday. Apparently, thanks to Luke Williams, who shared a stat with me yesterday. If I can get it up just to be exact, but I think he said that Salah yesterday accumulated 2.42 XG, the most he's ever generated in a single game, which is pretty insane considering he's playing one of the tightest leagues. One of the tightest defenses in the league. So Salah against Leeds is looking pretty decent. I know they're different away from home. It'll be interesting to see if he stays on pen, since he hasn't even hit the target now with his last two. But opportunities like Van Dijk potentially, or say Gakpo, Nunez for punts there. But captaincy on Salah.
Yeah, I'm on Salah, and I think those are both viable punts. You mentioned earlier, if you had a large volume of transfers, then coming off City, coming off Haaland maybe, and then moving on to a second Liverpool player, or in fact a Leeds player at that point in time, would be handy, knowing that their fixtures the following week are Fulham and Nottingham Forest, respectively. Not respectively, the opposite. It's Liverpool.
Unrespectively.
Liverpool.
Yeah.
Then, yeah, definitely if you've got a lot of transfers, then there's an opportunity to add additional players then.
Agree. Thank you so much for all the questions. We've had some amazing comments. Thank you so much, everyone. It is, I know we touched on it kind of briefly at the start. We don't want to make too big a deal of it, but just to say thank you so much for all the lovely messages received yesterday. You lot actually got me pissed yesterday, because I went down the pub with every intention of just kind of watching the game and coming home, but obviously after the excitement of that match and what it meant in terms of obviously Paul jumping up to 1 and 2 and me and me 3. I mean you can't make it up, right? But I was so excited. I was reading all your messages and things. I ended up staying out till stop tap until closing time midnight. So I was a bit worse for wear. But thank you so much. We really, really do appreciate it. And it's a long way to go yet. But just the fact to be able to show this screen that to be a top 3 in a major fantasy game with this kind of the season is it's just incredibly exciting. And really, really thank you so much, everyone, for all your support. It's really, really humbling, and just glad that we're able to, share it with everyone who, all you guys who we do every week. So thank you for that. FPL Fish says, well done both. Really hope one of you claims top prize. He asks what players and teams target over the next 2 weeks. Don't have Haaland. How do I get to Haaland now? I wouldn't be messing around personally, at home to Leicester. It could be a season ender, right? What do you think? I think Haaland's ownership. I think one of the reasons I was wavering on Haaland was because his ownership was so low, but we always knew he was going to jump up. And what did it jump up to on Saturday? It was like 71% or something stupid like that.
Yeah. What was it? I put a poll out, and there was a larger proportion of people not going back to Haaland than I thought would be on it. And I just, from conversing with people on Twitter and in group chats and such like that on Saturday morning, I just felt that wasn't the reality. That people, and not to say people were being deceitful when they were answering the poll. I just think that you answer the poll at a certain point in time, and then you start getting FOMO when you see them.
Well, I would have answered no on the Thursday, but as soon as Pep said, obviously to paraphrase, he's fit, he's ready, I was like, I cannot bring him in. But until that point, I was really split.
Yeah. So it doesn't play for 2 weeks afterwards. It's like so difficult now, because anyone that you're taking out, it's not even one game. Like, because your strikers are going to be some sort of combination of Tony, Kane, and Watkins, who play not only on that day, the following week. And then and then a few of them play before City play again, like the week after. Yeah. And again, it's easy being Captain Hindsight. But this is why I knew that I'd be in this position had this happened and then done it last week. What would I do? Like seriously.
I would do it.
If I had 10 plus transfers, I'd get them in.
Good call.
If I've got less than that, I wouldn't.
Good call. Ben Sky FF says, how do you guys feel about Maddison? Is it worth holding? I think we touched on this earlier. Said it probably is worth holding. I think the fixture's pretty good. I think they got City this weekend, but after that, they're pretty good. And
Wolves, Leeds, and then they play on the Monday night. And
you're probably going to want to bring a captain in, aren't you? You're not going to want to use a transfer for a player that's got similar transfer account as Maddison already has, and then use another transfer to potentially even bring Maddison back in, right? How sick would you feel if Maddison kicked off against Leeds, he was the player to have, and then you had to bring him back in for that game? I just think there's better opportunities left within the season to maybe use that transfer, bringing in like Rodri or a Mitoma or someone along those lines, which are going to be popular in a couple of weeks. Yeah, agree with you, mate. Yep. FPL Commander says, congrats guys in your positions. My team has gone up by another 50 places, but only 13 transfers left. They've got McAllister, Dunk, and Estupinan, and they're the only ones to make way, if any. Should I transfer out Estupinan for when and who in the future? If I held Brighton now, I'd just leave and focus transfers elsewhere. Paul, what do you think?
Yeah, I wouldn't take out any. I wouldn't take out any of those 13 transfers. Maybe it's on the cusp of take McAllister out, get some fixture volumes from someone, and then bring McAllister back in, perhaps. And I'm only saying McAllister because out of the three of those, based on Estupinan's price point and Dunk, I think still the standout Brighton asset to own until the end of the season, that McAllister might be the one that you don't end up going back to. Maybe you pick up Matoma in March if you're needing a little bit extra budget further down the line. How else would you use 13 transfers if you've already got 3 Brighton players and you're going to hold all those 3 Brighton players to the end of the season? Maybe then hold them and take, if you've got Haaland, take out Haaland and bring Haaland back. Because you can get a heavier price player in that instance. That's how, so I would either do McAllister in and out or do one of your heavy hitters that blank in that game week when the FA Cup games are on, and then bring that player that you're taking out back in.
Fair response. Glenn Murray says, it was only a 6-point difference and a transfer saved if Haaland wasn't captained over Tony. Could have been different if Tony doesn't get the goal disallowed and miss a penalty. It all depends who you would have captained as well, though, doesn't it? Because that would have made it a 12-point swing. Because I think Tony, did he score 7 or 8 points? I can't think now. Rashford scored 7 points. So it's a bit more than that. Appreciate the transfer saved is absolutely true, but you want to bring in Haaland again at some point, and it's going to be on a day which conflicts with one of your players as well. So, I can't. A big fan of yours, Glenn, but if he doesn't get the goal disallowed, well, he was offside, so it always was going to be that fact, and and if he doesn't miss a penalty, well, I think I said it a few times, but if my auntie had bollocks, she'd be my uncle, and these are just the things that you can't change them, right? If Salah would have scored that penalty yesterday, Paul's lead would be even bigger again, and it's just the way it kind of folds. You go with it. But I take your point about 6-point difference. I think I mentioned that at the start, actually, with if you did go for Tony and captain Watkins, for example, then it's not that massive. But having Haaland in place, I think, is still pretty big now, because everyone who doesn't have Haaland will have to bring in Haaland and use a transfer later down the line, I think, which I think your point, Paul, is what you're saying. It kind of, and it also takes this anxiety of the week now of whether to do it or not away from you, which is very, very important. So yeah, good stuff. Tom Hartnell says, without giving too much away, please could you share your team's transfer count, transfer plans, and mum's maiden name? I hope it doesn't come across as cheeky asking this. Thank you for that, Tom. Really good stuff. And Peter Klein says, well done so far. Is the rumour true that Sky are limiting prizes to residents of England this year? Let's hope not, Paul. Let's hope it goes north of the border. And Dale says, no question, it's well done on an incredible season so far. Dave Hannigan says, whatever happens, it's been a great stream and pod this year, so thank you. And secondly, Raya, stick or twist? Good question. I haven't had too much of a look, but when I have, there seems to be a natural-ish hop-off point on Raya. I can't remember exactly. It's after their third or fourth game, I think. Is it home to Forest?
Next 4 games are Wolves, Villa, which probably isn't a good defensive fixture just now, but Raya's been picking up. Actually, when you look at the scores, they've not been particularly great, but he's picked up saves bonus 3 times in the last 6 games. They've only kept 1 clean sheet in that period of time. I'm pretty happy to hold them for the next 4. So that's Wolves, Villa, Chelsea, Nottingham Forest, and then I will definitely move off after that Forest game. They play on the Saturday. There's loads of teams that played twice that week after Brentford play, and there's teams that both play twice after them that week and have extra fixtures later down the line. So I've mentioned before, Man United, Man City, Brighton. I wouldn't even rule out Newcastle adding to that.
Yeah, I was looking at it and I was thinking of moving to Alisson potentially, on Monday the 17th. Just having a quick look, it kind of ends up as a 3 for 3 anyway, doesn't it? Until that point where you are going to want to hop off. So it doesn't seem a lot of point. It's it's probably much better just to hold the transfer, play Raya, who we know in Sky is a really good keeper, regardless of anything. And then you've got the option then the following day on Sunday the 30th, Man City, Liverpool, Man United, Newcastle potentially as well. There's lots of teams you can hop on to. Sam Smith also asks the same question. Matt Woolley says, I realise second teams are generally a bit of fun, so I can't imagine this applies to anyone. But if you had two teams doing pretty well, when would you split strategies? Paul, interesting one.
Pertinent.
Topical.
I'm not even going to split strategies just now until I feel that I'd be de-risking by doing so. So just now I'm pretty comfortable having very similar teams. I think I've got one player different in the two teams just now. And I think I'll continue to do that. When there's a true 50-50 in captaincy, then I might consider it. As I say, there's not too many dates where I've got that concern. Maybe Saturday the 29th of April. I mentioned that before. Palace, West Ham, Brighton, Wolves, Brentford, Forest, Arsenal, Chelsea. Maybe there's a Dunk versus Saka type scenario that day that I might split captaincies, or maybe I bring in different Leicester players when they play Everton if I'm going to do that daisy chain through it. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if the question was geared towards me, knowing that I've got two teams that are doing well, or if you're also in that position and perhaps in leagues and such like. This is the first season where I've picked practically the same team and ran through it, and I think it'd be pretty obvious that I'm going to be a fan of doing that in future seasons as well.
Glenn also asks, is Paul interested in another drink around June? I wonder why he's asking that after your escapades a few weeks ago. Superb. Columbo, are you both going to send out a poll to see who we all will think will win between the both of you and a few others coming up the rails? I haven't really thought of that, in all honesty, but I think it's probably fair to say that Paul is, unless there's someone sneaking up on the outside with a lot of transfers left. I know you would never say this, Paul, but I think it's probably to say that Paul is the favourite. I'm not going to say you're going to win it, right? But you're in an extremely strong spot. 25 points clear of me, I think, in second. I think we've got reasonably similar transfer counts. So I'm sure we'll touch this now in a second. But if I am going to try and beat you, I need to, on those 50-50 captaincies, you're on about like Saka versus Martinelli or something along those lines, or Dunk versus Saka. There's things I'm going to have to do, but I'm going to leave it till the end anyway.
I know that you're in all the big cash leagues, and I'm not, so I don't know that you would play that risky. Yeah. Maybe you will, maybe you won't, but I guess there's other mitigating factors in that as well. But I'm not naive enough to think that I can't be caught, and I don't know. You don't know how many transfers everyone else has got. And even if the averages were out, and I'm saying that I've got one or two above average, there could be, Dale Pointer, it's a name that I recognise, does well in Sky. He's 6 overall. He could be sitting with 5-10 more transfers than me. That would put him as favourite if that information was known. So, I think I wouldn't be putting out a poll. I know it was tongue in cheek, and it was more rhetorical. Perhaps it was rhetorical. I don't know, but I don't think that I would rule anybody out, knowing that the person in 15th just now could have exactly 10, 15 more transfers than us. Right? I look back at my transfers and I think I've done well this season, and the value of my transfers made has probably been higher than any other season, and I've but there is some mistakes that I've made in there and some not great transfers, and there might be someone that's just made less transfers and has made really good transfers as well. So yeah, like I'm in a very, very, very good position. I'm very happy with the loose plan that I've got, but I'm not suggesting that I'll win it or anything.
Dark Invader says March or McAllister. I think at the moment I would say March for multiple reasons. I would, yeah.
I'd say McAllister, but there's a 0.5 saving there. Use Ian's planner. See if you've got make some loose plans. Does that 0.5 come in handy? If so, pick March. But I think if you're making the distinct, unless you've got them both and you consider getting rid of one to transition through and get short-term fixture gain, then move back, I wouldn't be looking at either this weekend personally, because they blank the following week and there's multiple hop-on points afterwards to get mass fixture volumes at that stage. I wouldn't rush any other Brighton players this weekend or next weekend.
He also asks, after Raya plays on the 29th, we touched on this earlier, which is the best keeper option? I think it's kind of hard to say at the moment, right? I think if you were to say at this moment in time, you'd probably say Edison. Well, I think I would say Edison, but who knows nearer the time, right?
And Ederson's 7.9, whereas De Gea's 7.3. That 0.6 savings might be the only way that you can stretch, or
exactly.
Steele perhaps you need the extra money there and going down to Steele to get extra money there. But yeah, I agree with you. Ederson would be my favourite. Right, as it right.
But to go from Raya to Edison or to Alisson, I think we also need, is it 1.4 or 1.6 as well? So, when everyone's thinking about these next 2 weeks, the transfers you're making, as you say about March and McAllister, that 0.5 could be the difference between you being able to get in Alisson or Edison. So it's really important to be thinking of these things as you're going through and making your plans. Ian Parrin's transfer planner will definitely help you with all this. fantasyfootballhub.co.uk. Search for Ian Parrin's transfer plan. It does all this for you. Sam says, made a handful of transfers and have 10 and 13 left. Is moving off Newcastle this Saturday a good move? So after Saturday, there are some teams who've got more fixtures in the short term, but Newcastle have got Spurs, Everton, and Southampton before the end of the month. I don't think there's massive upside there, Percy, to coming off him, because he's maybe
they've got an extra game against Brighton to be added somewhere as well.
They have, and obviously also the defence is really, really tight. Their assets are good value as well. Maybe if you've got like 3 Newcastle defenders, you maybe come off one potentially, but I've got Trippier, and I'm going to be holding. They've got loads of fixtures, best defence in the league. I don't see the point in coming out. I don't see, if there's like a 3-0 or something, I can understand it, but there's not, so I'd probably leave personally. Amateur asks around Leicester and Everton, 1st of May. Obviously, we'll leave it. We could leave it until the time, or wait till, I think, as you mentioned, Paul, Tuesday, the 25th of April, when Leicester play Leeds. Potential hop-on point there to go on to a player. No one from Everton, really, is there?
Yeah, the only way that I would do that is as if Watkins didn't appear against Fulham on that day, and then you want to cover captaincy, then you could maybe move to Maddison that day and then cover it for the week afterwards. But I probably wouldn't hop. If you didn't own any already, I wouldn't be moving to any unless you pick up an injury from a player in your team to save your transfer down the line.
John Burt says, shit just got real. Do you know each other's teams? Incredibly well played. Your podcast is brilliant every week. I'm not doing as well as this year, but have won I've won the Premier League 3 years running and the World Cup once, so not all bad. In terms of knowing each other's teams,
well, Fergi does a weekly article.
I do a weekly article, so everyone knows my team. fantasyfootballhub.co.uk. You can go and find out my team every single week. I don't know Paul's. I feel we've got about 8 or 9 players the same, just from the way that the scoring goes on. I know I've got Enzo, and I know you weren't keen on Enzo, so I think that's one difference. I'm not sure on the other one, and I think that even though Paul and I kind of chat in the week and stuff about different things and chat. We don't ask each other because even though we're friends and play the same games and stuff, we still compete in each other as well. It's best, not just only in Sky, but Nip and a Half as well, where we're really tight up against each other. So even though Paul can read my plans every week on the hub, I don't get to read his. I don't know whether that's a good thing or not, but you can just see with our teams. I think we've got like 8 or 9 the same, right? And roughly, and obviously because we talk a lot on this pod, that whole Arsenal massive hop on, which we both identified and both did. We'd have gone for 5 or 6 of the same players, or 4 or 5 or whatever else. But
we're a similar style. We're a similar style of player as well in the way that we play this game.
I think so, and I think that what's maybe helped us this year is, I'm sure you won't mind me saying that you're maybe sometimes a bit conservative, and I'm probably a bit too aggressive sometimes. But I think we've maybe kind of dragged ourselves to the middle of the pendulum a bit more this year.
Do you know what was yeah, I agree with that. Do you know what I find interesting? So I suspect we might receive questions around how's your tactics going to change at sitting at the summit rather than chasing down. And I can safely say that I'm going to play exactly the same tactics because I play a de-risk strategy anyway. I captain the player who I think is going to be the most captained on any given day anyway. So I continue to do that, and could people potentially use that as an advantage against me? Perhaps, but then the player that's going to be the most captained is that position for a reason, because people are picking the player because they think they'll score the most points. So the two go hand in hand anyway. So,
and also if you're doing that over a period, if you do that once, there is a chance that it comes out the other way. If you're doing that 9 or 10 times, it's kind of likely that the other person who's captaining the other person every time will not end up on the right side of the points over that sustained period of time, which is what kind of betting and all that is kind of all about in it. So I think that the way you play overseas, it's interesting actually, because someone in the chat, what was it? Johnny White says, I distinctly remember Paul saying earlier this year, he said, I won't win this game with the way I play the game. Yeah, here he is in first and second. So yeah, you've in terms of your captaincy and stuff, I think you've definitely just done the same. But I think what you've done is manipulate the fixtures really well to your advantage. Probably be maybe a little bit more aggressive than you usually would in terms of hopping on these, even like 2 for 0s and 3 for 0s, and just taking advantage. They obviously have to come off as well, right? Which is the kind of luck factor which accompanies the skill, I think.
Yeah, one thing that I've done more this season is, even if I've got a player that I own that's going to be a captain in 4 game weeks time, so Polina's the prime example, I knew that a player had multiple fixtures before that, and then get to that point and then look at the game in isolation.
Shorter term view, I think, has definitely helped. Planning is amazing, and it absolutely is, and it works. But there are instances where we say it all the time: things change, players change, form changes, positions change, positions in your league change. The way you de-risk or be aggressive can change inside a month, and stuff. So I think the ability to act and take what's in front of you is is kind of a massive thing, which has helped us both this season, I think. Ammon also asks about Leicester and Everton, which we've answered. He says, is it worth getting the likes of Mitoma, Grealish and Ollie say in the Sky game? I wouldn't be going for Olise personally, but I definitely think Mitoma and potentially Grealish have got a part to play at the end of the season. If Grealish continues his form and Mitoma continues his form, I can't see a reason why not. I know they're not kind of bonus magnets, maybe apart from shots, but what do you think, Paul?
Yeah, on both of the players that you've said, Grealish and Mitoma aren't great on tiers, but they will have loads of fixture volume towards the end. But there's multiple hop-on points that aren't this weekend coming, because they both blank next weekend. The following set of fixtures is on they play on Wednesday, 26th of April. So again, Watkins off, multiple other players you can jump off and move on to one of those players that day. The following week, City don't play until the Sunday, so you can jump say the following week, following set of fixtures, City don't play until the Sunday. You can jump on there. Even waiting to the Brighton on the 4th of May at that point, still got an abundance of fixtures to jump on there. In terms of Elise, I looked at him in particular. Before this weekend, 13 games, he had 2 attacking returns and no bonus, and that's from 12 starts as well. So that does feel a little bit short termism in that you just come off the back of an 11-pointer. And I'd be wanting to look at him over the next 3 or 4 games before I made that choice. At which point, there'd probably be no interest in Palace because of the lack of volume of fixtures.
DB says, as a non-Haaland owner, is Kane a competitive captain next week, or should I be getting him in Haaland? I think to Paul answered earlier, if you've got 10 plus transfers, I just think I would just do it. He's probably going to be up to 85% owned. If you owned him, you're going to captain him 100%, right? So yeah,
his effective ownership is going to be, you're right, the top 1,000 is going to be like 170%,
exactly.
180%.
We've got a bunch of questions and comments, which I'll just run through now, and then maybe we can just answer as a group at the end. But again, thank you so much for all the comments. Martin Beasley says, when do the mind games start between you pair? Congratulations both. Ultra Close says, check your microphones are working. Testing 1, 2, 3. Ollie Paul says, Fergie's come a long way since those Maverick midweek Callum Wilson type moves. What surprises he got up his sleeve for the running? Says, congratulations gents, great work. Planet FPL James says, no questions, just want you to know you've both got our full support. Keep it going, and we're happy to be best friends with whoever wins. Thank you so much for that, James. Dan Cox says, live final show from Vegas, get it on Fergie. Ian Parrin says, great to see you both doing so well. What were the key moves that have seen you rise up the table? Getting on and keeping Martinelli must be one. I've got a point on that Martinelli move, which I'll touch on in a second. FF Thinker, at what point as supporters of your respective teams are you worried about the pressure becoming too much? Just says, many congratulations. It's just a case of business as usual, or do you look over your shoulder a bit? Julian says, nothing to ask, just congratulations. Dan Stewart says, you're going to live stream the last game of the season. That's definitely a no, because hopefully we're going to be at in the pub, some kind of hub meetup, but we'll have to see about that. And Will Coker, at what point do you guys go under the radar and stop discussing your tactics with each other now that shit has got real? So I suppose there's a kind of theme there of you've already answered, I suppose, about changing your style of play and things. I suppose the competing against each other is an interesting point. We were asked this a few weeks ago when I think you were like 5th and 7th and I was like 15th or something. And I think the answer then from me was how I was going to chase you down was I'm definitely not going to make any maverick moves yet. I'm going to be organic. And I think at that time you were about 43 points ahead of me, which is now 25. So I think that's kind of worked so far. It could have gone the other way, obviously, right? I did have a transfer or two, in hand of you. But I think just to answer that specific question, 25 points is nothing, right? That's one match going one way. So I'm certainly not going to make any risky moves just to kind of answer that point. And I suppose in terms of the way we play, certainly
on that point as well, I think you can tell me if this point is valid or not valid, but the fact that I'm not playing in the overall 2, 10 and 20 pound cash league, which there's a lot of money at stake.
There is
a lot of money at stake. More money at stake in there than there is for finishing second overall in the entire game. Would you take risks to chase me down in first overall in the game, knowing that you might jeopardise your position in those leagues? Maybe the answer is yes, I don't know.
I think I'll know more in a few weeks, because as it stands at the moment, there's nothing in it. I'm like 2 points ahead or 5 points ahead in those leagues. That's just an appearance. There's absolutely kind of nothing in it. So, but to answer your question more broadly, I think because they're not all or nothing leagues, those cash leagues, even though there's significant money, right? And there is significant money, the breakdown in the cast, I think it's 50%, 25%, or whatever else. So, you're still talking thousands, and you are talking thousands. I think I'd have to see how it was kind of at the time. But I think as it stands, I would, if I was 10 points behind, there's also the gap as well, right? So if I'm within 10 points of you going into the final day, just for example, I may very well, assuming you go for, I don't even know who Haaland is playing, right? Who have, please be a hard game. Away to Brentford.
Is it any hard game?
Well, no, they're away to Brentford, which is not the easiest game. Away to Brentford. Man United home to Fulham. Spurs have got Leeds, so it may be that I decide just to kind of go for it, and with the ridiculously high upside against the lower downside of finishing second or third. If I'm still in the cash leagues, again, there's still a quarter of the season to go, right? There's still like massive way to go, but obviously answering these kind of hypothetically, but yeah, I think in terms of the word I play, I think an advantage I've got in this position is I've been here before in Dream Team, and I know that patience and discipline and not panicking and not making a rash move, it's very easy to, and I hear it a lot, I think it's very easy for people to say, I would just go for it, right? But I would just go for it. If you did that and made a rash move and it ended up costing you, how I would feel about that, it would give me nightmares. Whereas if I play my game the way I play it and someone outplays me and score more points, even though I did the best I could possibly do, I can sleep at night with that. And so that is always in the back of my mind, is this no regrets. And I don't mean no regrets as in just go for it and go wild. There's no regrets as in don't make a mistake just because I was having a moment of madness. So, and I think you're probably the same with that.
Let others make the mistakes. That's your motto there.
It is exactly that, mate. And it happens, right? Is people will make a crazy move just to try and do something different. Whereas if they'd have just stayed on course and done what they have always done, they could have ended up winning. Now imagine on the final day that kind of, and I did something stupid, or you did something stupid, right? Let's say we both bluffed each other. I said, right, I'm going to go for Kane. So you think, do you know what? I'm going to go for Kane and cover him just in case. And I end up going for Haaland and you lose because of that. Like, imagine how you would feel. So I think, with all that stuff in mind, I'm just going to play it out and just see, may the best player win. Not the best player, but may the person who's played this season the best win. Whoever it is, like we say, it could still be someone in 15th, right? But I'm certainly not going to jeopardize my whole season just by trying to be a bit silly. So I think you're quite similar lines to that, Paul. You seem reasonably level-headed most of the time. I have seen you drunk, but
I'm like I'd mentioned earlier on. While people might change to be looking over their shoulder, I think that I play a de-risk type game anyway, and I'll just continue to play the way that I do. Use the players outside of captaincy for fixture gains and volumes, and look at the best hop on, hop off points. Replan when needed if I've got a player injured or such like, and then 2 or 3 weeks towards the end of the season, I've got two teams competing, then maybe split strategies at that point, or continue on as what I do in one team and then do something different in another team. But certainly not doing that in the short term.
Yeah, same, and I just hope that both of us are kind of up there towards the end of the season. I say it's nice to be up early, but it's definitely, I'd be a lot more content if I was up here with like a week or two to go, rather than, certain teams have 10 games left, right? So there's still a long way to go. And it could be something as, even when we choose a Brighton mid, right? It could be that you go for McAllister, I go for Matoma, and Matoma bangs in a couple of goals. That's the difference gone, like straight away. So it's it's just keep plugging away, keep ticking the days off, ticking the weeks off, and see where it leads. But thank you so much, as I say, everyone for your support. It's really overwhelming, actually, and definitely brought a bit of a tear to my drunken eye yesterday when I was reading all the lovely messages, and it's just amazing to be in the position. And who knows, mate? But best of luck for the rest of the season.
Thank you.
Just a quick look at the Four Nations League, which I feel a bit hard done by. Third in the overall game and third in this league.
Of 10 players.
Of 10 players. Exactly that. Liam, 2578 and 2632 is 6th and 7th in this league. Dan Cox, 2674. Ian Parrin, 2709. And I'm on 2805, just 10 points behind Paul's second team on 2815. And Paul's top team, which is top of the pops, 2830. Just imagine if Salah scored that penalty yesterday. Was that another 14 points? It would be another 14 points, wouldn't it? Unbelievable. So that is the Four Nations League, and the FFH Members League, of which you're not in for some reason, Paul, but 10th, last year's winner.
I felt guilty taking money off the company that I do the podcast for.
Ken May, is the team for Mark Wisdish, last year's winner. There's some names in here. Every name now, every single name, unbelievable. Mark Wisdish is 10th. Cian McKenna, Sky Kangaroo, his name is everywhere I look, is 9th. Benjamin Lee, his name's everywhere I look, is 8th. Billy Anderson from the Hub group chat, who's had a fantastic season. Well done, Billy. Barry Moncur moved up 6 places, as did Cian, moved up 7 as well. So some big moves there. Very well done, Barry. Barry Grimes moved down 4. Didn't have the better weekends by the look of it, but still having an incredible season. Niall Murphy, we all know Niall. What a player. 2776, he's in 4th. David Baxter, another fantastic player. 2784 is in 3rd. Dale Pointer, who you mentioned earlier, superb player, 2796. And at the moment, I am top of the FH Members League, and I'm going to win a free Hub membership, which is interesting. So if I do win that, I will gift it down to the next person. Actually, we're all members, so I'm gonna have to gift it to someone else. But yeah, well done everyone there. Still a long way to go. And that is it for us for today. As usual, thank you all so much for watching and listening. Your continued support is much appreciated, and thank you so much to you, Paul. Where can people find you apart from Top of the Pops?
On Twitter at Paul McAnulty1, MCANULTY.
And my Twitter handle is at FFH_Fergi. If you like what you watched, please press the like button. Remember to subscribe in the bottom right hand corner of the screen. If you enjoyed your listen, please rate the podcast and leave some comments. It would be much appreciated. We'll be back next week. Now, these next 2 weeks are a real pain because I'm away on both. I'm away both for long weekends, so we're going to have to work out something pretty creative, Paul, over these next 2 weeks. Yeah, it's gonna be interesting because I'm away on both. I'm away all weekend, including the Mondays, the next 2 weeks. So we're gonna have to sort out something, but I'm sure we will. But we will be back at some point next week, looking ahead to Sky Game Week 38. We wish you all a great Sky Game Week 37, and goodbye for now.